Okay, so today we're going to talk about the rate of change and slope. So the rate of change represents the change over time or change over unit. Okay, so the car problem that we talked about yesterday was we were going to talk about the car efficiency. Then it's like how many miles can the car go per gallon, right? That's rate of change. Okay, so for example, Jenny left home headed for aunt's house. After 2 hours, she has traveled 130 miles. It's always change over time. Time is, we're always comparing change per time. So we always put the time on the denominator. So after 2 hours, she traveled 130 miles. So it's going to be 130 miles for 2 hours. And that's going to be 65 miles per hour. And that is the rate of change. In this case, that's the speed, correct? Next example, John lost some of his bank statements. All he can figure out is after 3 months, he had $540 in his bank account. And after 7 months, he had $420. What is his rate of change? First of all, let's think about this. Did he lose money or did he earn money? So he lost money. So if you want to figure out how much is lost, you kind of need to do the subtraction because you want to see the difference. Is that correct? So I always want to subtract 420 minus 540 because I want to see how much he lost. So that's going to be, if you do the math, that's going to be negative 120. He lost $120. In how many months? From 3 months to 7 months. That's how many months? 4 months. So in 4 month period, he lost 120, which is $30 per month. Right? Okay. So that's a rate of change. That can be the speed, that can be how much is change per month, how much is change per unit, how much is change per gallon. We can come up with numerous examples about rate of change. Another term for rate of change is slope, and that's where we're going to focus on today. Okay, so the slope is change, rate of change, and it's always change in y value, which is dependent variable, over change in x. And we always say it's going to be rise over run. Okay? So we always rise and then run. With the coordinates, the slope is the change in y over change in x, and that's here is how we write it. y2 minus y1. That's going to be change in y over change in x, which is x2 minus x1. So let's take a look at it. So example, graph the line and find the slope. So we can do it two ways. I'm going to show you both ways. First of all, I'm going to actually plot these points, negative 3, 0. And then negative 1, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? So, slope can be found two ways. We can use the graph. When we use the graph, we always do rise over run. So, if you look at the graph, from one point to the next point, we gotta rise how many? We always start from the left point, so I'm going to rise how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We rise 6. Up 6. When you go up 6, that's going to be positive 6. And then you run how many? 2. Is that right? So it's always rise over run. And then rise positive 6, run positive 2. And that's going to be positive 3. That is the slope of this line. Slope of those 2 points. So when you graph it, you always do rise over run. But if you're only given the order pairs, then we're going to just use the formula because it's rise over run is the same thing as change in y over change in x. Change in y over change in x. Okay? So what does y2 mean? That's the second point of y. We always start from the second one. And then this is the first y. So we always go second y minus first y. 6 minus 0. Correct? And then we're going to always subtract first second x minus first x. So negative 1 minus negative 3. Especially in slope, the sign is so important. So you got to be really, really careful. So 6 minus 0 is 6. Negative 1 minus negative 3 is positive 2. Oh, that's 3 as well. So doesn't matter which way we're using. You can graph it or you're just using the points. You will get the same answer. All right, let's try the next one. So negative 1, negative 3, 5, negative 3. So how do you do this? Let's graph it first. Negative 1, negative 3. 5, negative 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 3. Okay, I'm going to connect these two. So if I want to go from here to here, how much is rise? None. We don't rise at all. So that's going to be 0 over, how much is running? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. Okay, when you do 0 divided by 6, that's going to be what? 0 divided by 6. If you put it in your calculator, that's going to be 0. So anytime you see the flat line, when you connect these two, it makes a flat line. That's a 0 slope. If you think of the ski slope, would it be fun to ski on this type of slope? This is 0 slope. That's no fun. 0 fun. That's a 0 slope. Correct? Let's just double check using our formula. Okay, it's always change in y over change in x. Y always go on the top, x goes on the bottom. So the first y value, second y value, I always like to write these out before I start. So negative 3 minus negative 3. 5 minus negative 1, that's going to be 0 over 6, and that is 0. So does it really matter which way we're using? It's going to be the same answer. Okay, let's move on to the next one. We're almost done. So let's graph it first. Negative 2, positive 1, 1, negative 3. Okay, so I'm going to start from the left side to the right side. So I'm going to go from here to here. I'm going to start from here. We got to go rise over run. How much is rising? You go 1, 2, 3, 4. This time we're not going up, we're going down. Anytime we're going down, it's going to be negative. So you go down 4 units, and then you go across how many units? 3 units. Since we're going to the right side, it's going to be positive 3. So rise negative 4, you go down 4, and then go across 3. We cannot simplify this anymore, so that's going to be just negative 4/3. That is the slope. This time we have a negative slope. And when you graph those 2 points, I'm going to connect those 2 points. This will make negative slope. Okay. let's just double check our answers using our formula, okay? Because you need to know how to do it just given points. So y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. I'm going to write it down until we all memorize it. So y1, y2, I like to label these points first. x1, x2. And then I'm going to just write it down. y2 is negative 3, take away 1. x2 is 1, take away negative 2. Sign is very, very important, okay? So negative 3 minus 1 is negative 4 over 1 minus negative 2 is 3. So does it really matter which method we're using? You're going to end up with the same answer. The only problem with the graph is if you're given like points 10, 54, comma, negative 1, 3. You're not going to be able to graph all these points to do the rise over run. So you really need to know the formula. But other than that, you can graph it at any time and figure out the slope. Okay? Let's do the next one, last one. So we're going to check it from starting with the rise over run. We're going to check with the graph first. We're going to plot the points first. So 0, negative 1. 0, negative 4. Okay, so how much rise? I'm going to start from this point to this point. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3 points. Go down 3. Are we running anywhere? We're not running to the right or running to the left. So run will be 0. If you put this in your calculator, negative 3 divided by 0, you will end up with error message. Because we cannot divide anything by 0. So that's going to be undefined. Okay. So if I connect those two dots, it makes a vertical line, up and down line. And if you ski on that type of slope, even though you're a professional skier, it's impossible to ski on this type of slope. So it's going to be impossible. Anytime it's impossible, it's going to be undefined. Okay? So let's use the formula. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we're going to label them first, x1, y1. x2, y2, trust me, when you label it, you will understand. It's so much easier. So y2, which is negative 4, take away negative 1. 0, take away 0. Negative 3 over 0. Again, we cannot divide anything by 0, so it's going to be impossible. We call that undefined. So we've learned different ways of figuring out the slope. We can do rise over run, or we can do x2 minus x1 over y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Remember, always y goes on the top because it's the rise. We go up and down first, okay? Over x2 minus x1, right? So if you look at this, guys, slope is, there are 4 kinds of slopes. There is positive slope, zero slope, which is flat line. There is negative slope and undefined slope. We're going to do more practice in class, so I'll see you later.